Hey guys, welcome to the Trash Picture Show. I've decided to take this opportunity to show you some of my custom figures. Now, I had done custom figures before, but a lot of them didn't turn out that well. But since I've kind of left my job, I've gotten into figure customization and diorama creation in a big way, and I've gotten a lot better at it. So I'm going to show you some of the custom figures I have made and the processes I went through to make them. So first off is Carrion Bella from the Alien vs Predator Deadliest of the Species comic. This figure was not made by NECA, but I do think that they should make a proper carrion figure down the line, but I didn't want to wait, so I decided to disassemble my bootleg Michiko Nagachi. Now, the bootleg Michiko Nagachi was an exception to the rule. One rule I will always say to someone who's making custom figures is never spend more than a tenner on the base figure that you're going to use to customize, because if you make a hames of it, or if you destroy it, or if it gets damaged in such a way it's no use to you, then that's a fucking shitload of money down the toilet. Never spend more than a tenner, €10 at most. 9 times out of 10, I would use a discounted wrestler figure, because I find the WWE figures get reduced fairly frequently, because like most sports stars, the seasons change and wrestlers change and stuff. So you can probably get a discounted wrestler. Also, always try the thrifties, because you never know what action figures you might come across. You might come across a lot of kind of interesting figures or old school figures in toy bins, in second-hand shops or thrifties or Salvation Army stories. So I used this one, and again I broke my rule and I disassembled a €20 Michiko Nagachi bootleg. Main reason I disassembled her and decided to use her for the custom was I didn't like some of the paint application, the joints were shit, and her posability wasn't the greatest. So I disassembled her, fixed up some of the parts that were problematic, removed the head, and hit her with black spray paint. Now, I use metallic spray paint to give it a kind of rustic medieval look. One thing I'm saying is when you use spray paint, always kind of cover certain areas that you don't want to get kind of damaged or fucked up with the paint with masking tape. Now, for the most part, it worked, but around the corners, the paint obviously splattered and flicked. But just use a bit of masking tape to cover up the parts that you don't want to get absolutely fucking destroyed. So I hit it with a kind of metallic matte black spray paint to give it a kind of grungy look. And to add to the grungy look, I was walking down the street and I came across what was essentially a kind of tassel of a dumped curtain rail, and I took a part of it and decided to snip off the chains to give her what looked like a kind of chainmail tunic or chainmail skirt. Another thing is always be on the lookout for like pieces of scrap metal or pieces of upholstery, because you can use them towards your kind of custom. So never rule anything out. Always keep your eye on certain bits and bobs that you can use for the custom. I then added this. This is a part of a Lord of the Rings Lego set, and I cut it up and used it to make a really gnarly kind of medieval shoulder blade for the head. Now, again, this is kind of a loophole for me. The head is from a Marvel Legends Emma Frost figure. Now, I got the figure. I adore that figure, and I adore the head that was on that figure. I prefer the bob haircut Emma Frost, and I had no intention in using this head, switching this head at any time or stage in me displaying the figure. So I said, you know what, this would make a fucking perfect Carrion Bella figure. And yeah, like in the comic, she's a blonde bombshell, and I decided, you know what, that works perfectly. So I put the Carolyn Delarue figure together using the Emma Frost head. The only thing is the joints from the Michiko and the joints from the Marvel Legends do not line up. So I had to bite the bullet and glue the head on. But by and large, still looks like a nice figure. Very happy with what is essentially my first ever custom, and really, really, really kind of really nice job I think I did with the paint application and stuff, and she has a really cool grungy look. She's not exactly like the version she is in the comic, but the fun thing about customization is it doesn't have to be exactly like the movie, the comic, the video game. It's your version. And so long as you can tell and other people can tell who it is, well then you've reached your goal. And it's a personalized figure. Someone can come into your room and go, "Oh, that's cool. Where can I buy that?" And you can turn around and go, "Well, you can't. I made this from scratch." So yeah, really nice figure. Really happy with the way she turned out. Speaking of Michiko, I decided to use the decapitated head to make a kind of ninja Michiko. My kind of headcanon story was that once she left the Predator clan, she decided to become an assassin. So, what I did was, again, going into a toy store, there was a bunch of wrestler figures on discount for €8. I bought a Ruby Riot figure, and I, her figure went for two custom parts, and I'll show you the second part I used in the ladder custom. I'll show you that in a minute. So, what I did was I used the body for Michiko because Michiko isn't that tall. And again, I wanted to kind of make her like a ninja, stealthy kind of ninja. So I hit her with the black spray paint and glued the head on. Again, issue with attaching the NECA heads. And she looked really kind of sleek and cool in this kind of ninja outfit. Then I got a Psylocke, I think Play Arts Kai Psylocke figure that came with like 9 katanas, and I glued one of the katanas onto the side there to give her a real kind of cool samurai look or ninja look. I had also entered an eBay auction and gotten a selection of NECA Predator, Alien, and Colonial Marine parts, and I used that for the wrist bracer there, and I attached 2 Figma blades onto that. Any issues I had with this was just be careful when mixing glue with freshly sprayed paint, because the glue can sometimes make the paint run, and it may not leave you with the desired effect. But yeah, I glued the Figma blades onto that gauntlet, and it looks really, really nice. Then, as one final touch, I glued these on. These are essentially ammo clips from a Star Wars laser rifle, and I just snipped them off and decided to put them on as like kind of ammunition pouches or mines or grenades or something that Michiko can use in a mission. And yeah, I kept it fairly minimum because she looks cool. If the minimalistic look, I think, looks really well, and yeah, she looks really cool and sleek, and you could see her like going out hunting with predators or hunting aliens or doing assassination missions for Weyland-Yutani. Yeah, really proud of this figure, and yeah, really cool. Didn't cost that much. I had the parts lying around, and I decided to pop them together. So next up, we have what I call my William Gibson Hicks. Now, this is essentially Hicks if he had survived the events of Alien 3 and decided to hunt down Xenomorph. The base body is a not Marvel, DC Universe figure of Rick Flag from Suicide Squad. He had kind of khaki colored pants. I wanted to distinguish it more like a Marine, so I hit it with a kind of forest green spray paint. And again, when you're spray painting, just cover out the areas with masking tape that you don't want to get wrecked, because spray paint goes fucking everywhere. You can try and aim it, or you can try and contain the spray as much as you can, but yeah, by and large, spray paint goes everywhere. It even got in his shoulders. I can clean that off, but it would have been a lot worse. So yeah, I spray painted that. I removed the Rick Flag head, attached the Hicks head, which I got with the eBay auction pack with all the different Alien and Predator parts. I wanted him to look like he would have looked after the events of Aliens. So I used whitewash in his eye to mist up his eye, and took some sandpaper and a screw to his face and cut in a scar around the eye and kind of rolled stuff over. I didn't want to kind of just like make half his face red. I didn't want to make him look like Harvey Dent's Two-Face from Batman. I wanted to make him look like he did in the William Gibson comic. He's scarred, but he's still kind of handsome looking. The funny thing was, he originally had a helmet, and I had to cut the helmet off. So I used polyfiller to fill the hole, and I'll hit him with paint at a later date. To distinguish him more as a kind of a Marine or a PMC, I've decided to make him kind of Wayland Yutani PMC. I gave him this corporate pulse rifle, which was essentially a all black pulse rifle that I hit with white paint, a motion tracker that came in that set, and a welding torch. One thing I will say is, with the more budgetary DC and Marvel figures, their figures are connected. So what you want to do is you might get nail clippers and put the nail clipper underneath the trigger finger and snip it. That way his finger can actually fit into the trigger well a lot easier than when it's not. So yeah, I'll show you there. So it just fits into the trigger well a lot better, and he isn't just like holding the gun limp. Like, if you can pose him a lot better if you snip up the fingers a bit, and it can look like he's holding his pulse rifle like that. So yeah, any other drawbacks? I did have to shear down the ball joint for the head with some sandpaper, because again, this is one of the few times I'm lucky enough that I didn't have to glue the head on. I just had to kind of shear down the thickness of the ball joint in the neck and connect the head. And yeah, he turned out pretty well. Pretty awesome figure. Happy out with him. He looks like something that could have been in an alternate Alien 3. And yeah, just the accessories, I think, really make him. So that is my William Gibson Hicks. And lastly, my current custom figure is what I call Lady Loki. This is my idea for a female version of Loki, and I wanted to get across a kind of Norse look. I didn't want her to exclusively look like something from the MCU or even the comics. This is essentially, from my head, what I think a Lady Loki would look like. So again, the Michiko figure is the Ruby Riot body. This is the Ruby Riot head. I looked at the head, and when I removed the head, I was like, okay, this is going to be for a Loki figure, because she has some kind of Tom Hiddleston kind of look to her, some kind of mischievous femme fatale. And having that head removed made me think, you know what, there's a basis for another figure, and it was the female Loki. So that's what gave me the inspiration for it. So I went off and bought another wrestler figure for 8 bob. Broke it apart, spray painted it, and the main kind of base color I had was green because it's Loki, and I hit it with spray paint. Had to tape up the legs, taped up the arms, and yeah, taped everything that wasn't going to be painted. But I did kind of spray paint the torso, the chest, the neck, because it was going to be concealed. That wasn't a major issue. Then I made a corset and a cloak from a Paul Costello pillowcase that was reduced, and I cut it up. Paul Costello is kind of a fancy brand in Ireland, and his stuff kind of looked really kind of expensive and nicely patterned. I cut that up. I used it to make the cloak and a corset. For the beads on the cloak and the corset, I went to a kind of art supply shop and got these. They're tab beads. You can glue them onto anything, and they're fairly handy. I wanted them to make it look like she had jewels or pearls on her corset and on her cloak. And I also put them on the base of the cloak there. And yeah, it looks a bit rough. I am going to clean it up a bit, but not too much, because I wanted this to have a very Norse vibe. That this isn't just from like a Marvel movie. This costume could have been worn during the time of the Vikings, and she could have been like mingling with the Vikings. So I kind of gave her this real kind of fur, medieval kind of Norse look with the fur, and I used the fur. The fur is actually from a Santa hat that I cut up. So I cut up the fur and put it around as arm cuffs or wrist cuffs, around the boots and the cloak. So yeah, I used a Santa hat to make the fur. And one thing I originally had intended was not to have the legs covered, but when I was leaving her to dry, the paint ran. So, uh, God love Neve, she's a legend. Neve went in and bought me a pair of tights because I'm a fucking wuss to go up and ask for a pair of tights in a department store. I cut them up and just glued them over her legs. So yeah, I'm very happy with the way she turned out. A very kind of Norse looking Lady Loki, and probably the first in a line of kind of Marvel or superhero figures I might try chance my hand at. I will probably do a couple more Alien and Predator ones, but I do want to do kind of my own interpretations of the Marvel universe. And yeah, very happy with the way she turned out. So any tips or kind of suggestions on what to do when customizing a figure? Okay, again, I will reiterate, when you're getting a base figure to do the customization, never spend more than a tenner, because chances are you can fuck up the figure, and it would be a waste of money to have to dump an action figure that costs €20. If you can, try and keep it under a tenner. So in that case, if you're going to a toy store and buying a new figure, go to the discount bins, go to kind of sections that would have the toys reduced, and if you can, always go with the old reliable wrestler figures, because one, the articulation on them is good. That you can put them in a lot of poses. You can really kind of have a lot of fun with those wrestling figures. Two, there isn't that many accessories and stuff on them. Um, for want of a better word, they're essentially naked figures. That you can add your own stuff. You don't have to like worry about having to peel off armor or clothes or anything, because they're already fairly bare. And two, the joints on the or three, the joints on them can be removed easily. Now, one thing I will admit that pisses me off is her head can't move, her head can't move, and her head can't move, because I was in such a haste to try and change the heads. I ended up pulling out the ball joints. If you can, try and leave the joints intact. If you do need to glue, if you have to glue, make sure it's a last resort. Always try and keep joints and arms and legs and heads intact, because that lends to the posability of the figure. You don't want to totally fuck up the figure. So yeah, if you can, try not to break any of the joints. Try to remove them. Methods for doing that would be to seep the figure in warm water. That would soften some of the ball joints, and you can easily remove the figure parts then. Always try and keep everything separate. Don't try and do everything at once. For example, don't try and paint them and change the head at the same time, because you might end up, the glue might fucking mix in with the paint, or you might end up spray painting the face. Just do each stage one kind of stage at a time. Don't ever rush the customization of a figure. If you are still on a budget, try secondhand shops, try toy bins, because I do find, like with the toy stores, wrestler figures are usually ones that you'll always find in the toy bins. Like any sport, the WWE changes its roster, so you'll probably find a bunch of old wrestler figures which are prime for using for customization. Um, Other kind of things in thrift shops you can look for is always look for little knickknacks, like bits of material, like bits of stationery, or even kind of upholstery. Like if you wanted to make a cloak, or if you wanted to make a costume, have a look at the likes of pillowcases or old sheets or tea towels. You can use stuff like that to like make kind of old rustic kind of looking clothes and such forth. Or even old electronic parts, if you wanted to make a character who's cybernetic, like even bits of old MP3 players or wires or anything like that. Always look for that stuff in secondhand shops, because that's really helpful, and that really adds to the kind of character of it. Again, never spend a fortune on a custom figure, because on customizing a figure, because you will end up kind of, you could end up making an absolute hames of it and have to throw away not only a €30 figure, but also money spent on other stuff to customize the figure. So yeah, again, always try and keep the base figure under €10, and never spend like a euro or a dollar on accessories. Just always have a look around, and Have fun with it. If it doesn't look like what it is in the comic or exactly what it looks like in the movie or the video game, it that's not the point. The point is it's your figure, you made it, you put your kind of imagination and heart and soul into it, and that's what's important at the end of the day. At the end of the day, if someone comes into my house and sees Carrion here and goes, "Oh, where can I get that?" Well, I can turn around and say, "You can't. This is something I made for myself." That's the cool thing. This is a unique addition to your collection. If you guys have any questions on figure customization or suggestions or want help, leave them in the comments below. And yeah, have a good one. Take care. Bye now.